going to be bad, you better be really good at being bad. You don't have to be perfect. What you have to be is nice. Have you ever flown behind reindeer that have had lots of carrots?
I have
It's not a pleasant experience. Because Santa Claus in America was part of a propaganda campaign during the Civil War. But I wanted to be, in a big rock and roll band like Chicago or Earth, Wind and Fire. And I pulled out the Hustler magazine in Jerry Falwell's office and said, you had this guy on, he was in here in July, and Falwell stopped everything and said, thank you for coming, and got up out of his own office and walked out. There are a lot of people behind what you do every day on the air that deserve a lot more respect and a lot of gratitude for what they do. This is a time when we were given the greatest gift we were ever given, and it's our turn to give our greatest gifts back to the people that we love and the people that we don't even know.
Welcome to another edition of No Holds Barred. I'm Rich Roth, and my guest today is, we are smack dab in the middle of the holiday season. Why not talk with the jolly old elf himself?
Ho, ho, ho. Ho, 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 ho.
Santa Claus, Kris
Hello.
Kringle, Father Christmas. What's your favorite name?
The old fat man with a white beard is what I get called a lot. So,
Santa, I'm sitting here and I have so many questions for you.
I hope I can answer them all.
First of all, I'm noticing your water bottle. It says Santa Claus. On the other side, naughty or nice.
Yep.
How have I been this year?
Well, you know what list you're on. I don't need to tell you. And that's what I tell children. Parents goes, he on the naughty list? He should be on the naughty list. I go, well, he knows what list he's on or she's on. And sometimes the she's are tougher than the he's.
Do we always know, though? Because I feel like I've had a pretty good year. But I think if we asked other people, they might have a different opinion.
Different people have different levels of measurement when it comes to naughty or nice. Okay?
But you only have two lists.
Not necessarily.
Really?
You talk to adults and you have a naughty list, a nice list, an almost nice list, And when I get asked the question, and I got asked the question this past weekend with the Lynchburg Symphony Orchestra, the orchestra leader, the maestro, asked me, is everyone in our audience, are they on the nice list? And my answer was, almost. Because nothing's perfect. No human being is perfect. And I want kids to understand that sometimes it's tough. You don't have to be perfect. What you have to be is nice. And that comes with a time when people aren't nice to you sometimes, that you have to be nice. And I'm a firm believer in kill them with kindness and make things as nice as you can and make the everyday Christmas for everybody. Because children especially have gifts that they can give their friends that they haven't even realized yet. And it's part of their learning process. I just want them to think about, make the right choices, make the correct choices. And sometimes, you have to make the wrong choice to be on the nice list. And the wrong choice is to tell somebody they've got to stop picking on somebody. Or you got to tell them, how would you feel if you were treated that way? And, sometimes you have to be real with the subject to make them understand. Now, kids are different. They fly all over the place. They do all sorts of different things. They're scared to death of old fat men with white beards and deep voices. And you just have to, work through it. Look at your shoes. Your shoes are sparkly. Look at your boots. Your boots need white fur on top. Can I see them? What about that gingerbread cutout you have on your shirt there? Tell me about that. And that's how you overcome their fears. You teach them to overcome their fears and be comfortable with the old fat man with the white beard.
That was a much more serious answer than I was expecting.
Well, it's people take this lightly, and I don't. And sometimes maybe I should take it a little less lightly, a little less more seriously, rather.
Well, you're going to hate my next question.
Okay, shoot.
Is there such a thing as a good kind of naughty?
It depends. If you're going to be bad, you better be really good at being bad. And I tell that to adults all the time. I mean, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, as long as it's, not mean, as long as it's, what goes on between two consenting adults is two consenting adults. But,
So in that case, it might be okay.
But you got to be really good sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay.
At being bad.
Okay. Here, another one. And this obviously wouldn't be a gift from you, but gifts between adults, men and women. Why is it okay for a man to get tools for Christmas, but God forbid a woman get a vacuum cleaner?
Here's the thing. Santa Claus wants to give people what they want. And sometimes a housewife may want a robot vacuum cleaner for Christmas. That might be okay. But that's why you need to communicate with different people. What do you like? What's your favorite things? Talk to them all the time. Be continuously asking questions and thinking in your mind, what kind of present can I give this person to impress them? And I'll give you an example.
Please.
I was at a Christmas Eve event one time, and we were eating oysters. And I came across a pearl in an oyster. And I was like, and it was a pretty good sized pearl. It was not perfect. It was just a big pearl. And I jokingly said to the folks around it, maybe I need to give this to Miss Claus for Christmas. What I hadn't told them all was that 4 weeks before, when it was on sale, I had purchased Mrs. Claus a nice pearl cluster ring to wear. And anyway, on Christmas Day, when she opened her present and there was this pearl cluster ring in there, she was excited and was like, and all the kids were like, "How did you do that?" And because I said, because I'm Santa Claus. And she was very surprised. And you have to think of in terms of situations where you can take advantage of things like that. So that became a situation that I was able to take extreme advantage of because I thought ahead to get enough to get a pearl cluster ring for her. So,
speaking of Mrs. Claus.
Yes. Which one? The one that's Mrs. Claus with me or my Mrs. Claus that I'm married to?
Well, I've seen lots of different images and pictures of Mrs. Claus, and there's a wide range of what she looks like and what she wears.
Correct. Just like there's a wide range of what I look like and what I wear sometimes. As Father Christmas, I look more saintly, like St. Nicholas. Mm-hmm. And, as Santa Claus, I wear a red suit and I, try to be mystical to children and real with parents. I want parents to experience a situation with their children where they think back to their childhood and the good things they thought about the holiday. That's important. And people, it's not just a situation where you're enacting with a child and getting a picture taken. My experiences, I hope, are total experiences where the whole family enjoys it. And the adults think about a time when they believed and what was going through their minds.
So we're about a week away from the big day. Are you ready?
I sometimes make appearances in March at birthday parties, especially in July, Christmas in July. I'm very busy then. And in August, I do Summer Santa at different events that don't qualify as Christmas in July events, but are very similar. And, like the Hill City Slide. I was at Hill City Slide this year. Folks came in, sat with me on my grass skirt covered bench with beach towels and beach balls and surfboards, and we had fun. And they went down Hill City Slide, and as the day wore on, I went downhill city slide too. So it was a lot of fun.
So you stay busy year round, but we're a week away. Are you ready for the big day?
I've been ready. I've been ready. I
Okay.
just hope folks at home are ready. I hope parents are ready. I hope children are ready. Not every Christmas morning is acceptable to children. They sometimes get things they don't like or things they don't expect, or they get things they want, or they get things or they don't get things that they want. But, I've found that children play with toys, and then, when Christmas is over, they end up playing with cardboard boxes and blankets, So, and parents have to be creative in that mind and take it out. I always tell them to pull out the Santa card if they need to keep kids from bickering. And I tell brothers and sisters, look, you've got to stop bickering with each other. You got to stop picking on each other. Mom and dad go nuts when you do that. So, and mom and dad are always shaking their head. How did he know that? Well, you know what children do. They play.
People talk about leaving cookies and milk for you.
And carrots for the reindeer.
Carrots for the reindeer.
Have you ever flown behind reindeer that have had lots of carrots?
I have not.
It's not a pleasant experience. I suggest celery with peanut butter as an alternative.
Okay, very good. And what about for you?
I eat about 8 billion cookies a year and drink about 450 million gallons of milk or eggnog or cocoa or whatever they leave.
So it must get old. What would you like to see?
Sometimes I run into pizza.
Okay.
Is
that good?
That's happened. That's happened a couple.
So you like when people change it up a little bit?
They have leftover. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, and a lot of cola. I'll use the term Coca-Cola since most everybody does. But that they see the picture of the Coca-Cola Santa, and they have a Coca-Cola Santa suit. I have one. And
well, the caffeine must help you stay
with
it all night.
Yeah, but the
That's a long night, right?
bathroom stops are tough. That's where it gets tricky.
I can imagine.
So
I can imagine. What's the worst thing someone's ever left out for you to eat, and did you punish them with bad gifts?
Fruitcake.
We're talking with Santa, actually, Jeff Taylor.
A jolly old elf reenactor. That's what I call myself.
A jolly old elf reenactor.
Yep.
And you've been doing the Santa thing since what, 1969?
I started out, I was working in a department store. I'm a 1960s hippie kind of guy. And big head of hair, dark hair and beard. And the Santa got sick, and one of the ladies in the beauty parlor, because they had beauty parlors in the department stores back then, and Globman's department store in Martinsville, Virginia, told Mr. Abe Globman, they said, if we could just spray Jeff's beard and hair with the white tips and streak stuff, he could do Santa. So he came and asked me if I'd be willing to be a test thing and not guaranteeing that I was going to get to do Santa. And they sprayed it, and I put the suit on. He said, go do it. And you've seen it enough times to do it. And they had two setups, as I call them. They had the Santa throne with the wide arms so kids could sit on. And then they had a sleigh for families to get in the back, and Santa would get in the front. And I mean, it was a real sleigh. It wasn't the Albany Clipper, I can't remember, but it was the kind of workhorse sleigh with two seats. And I went and did it and had fun, because the first group of people I saw were people that I knew, but they didn't recognize me with the white hair and beard. It was a lot of fun. I called them by name, and it was kind of fun. So I did it for 3 days, and then he came back, and voila.
You've turned it into, I want to say, a second career, but it's probably a third or fourth or fifth career for you. You've done a lot.
I've been doing this now for over 10 years. So, and studying, there are Santa schools that are wonderful. There are opportunities. They have a Santa convention every other year in Gatlinburg. 400 or 500 Santas get together with several Mrs. Clauses and Christmas performers, elves, and other folks that do this professionally, because they do things throughout the year, like perform in circuses or sing, or do music camps, or lots of different things.
So there's really a whole lot more to it than just throwing on a suit
It's
for a
a
couple
whole
of weeks
cottage
a year.
industry. Oh yeah, a lot more to it. Yeah, and I also do a history of Santa Claus through the years, because Santa Claus in America was part of a propaganda campaign during the Civil War. The first thing that really happened was in 1822. A gentleman wrote a poem called "A Visit with St. Nicholas." You probably know it as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," and it was published in 1823. So here we're going on 203 years of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." And as part of the propaganda campaign during the Civil War, a gentleman by the name of Thomas Nast made a cartoon drawing of Santa Claus that went in Harper's Weekly in January 3rd edition of the 1863 Harper's Weekly, of Santa Claus only giving presents to Union troops. And the present he was giving to them was a little doll with a noose around its neck, and you pull the string at the bottom and its arms and legs flailed, and that was called the Jeff Davis doll. And that was what they were after, to get rid of Jeff Davis, the president of the Confederacy during the time. And so the Southern newspapers, because they knew Harper's Weekly went south, had to write articles about how Santa Claus was being held hostage by the Union troops, or he was killed, or he didn't make it through the blockade, or whatever the situation was. But that became a huge propaganda piece for Lincoln. And later in life, Mr. Nast, who was a cartoonist or a graphic drawer, picture maker for Harper's, drew several different versions, and one was in a suit based on "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" Santa. His clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. Coca-Cola put him in a red suit, button-up suit, and there's a Coca-Cola suit. But this has grown over the years in America, but it came from Europe. Santa Claus, from the Finnish and Nordic countries. And he had a guy who went with him called Black Pete, who gave coal to the poor kids. And the reason that, and there
not the bad kids,
the poor kids. He gave them coal so they'd have heat.
Oh, okay.
So, but the people would say, the parents would go, see those kids over there? They got coal. They were bad. So it's kind of like saying that.
So that's how that part of it's evolved.
Folks on one side of the road lived that were poor, were bad people, and we were the only good people, and we're the great people. And there was distinct classes back in America back then.
So that's where if you're naughty, you get coal came from.
Yeah, and it's pretty much not the case. It's pretty much that kids got coal for warmth, for heat, because that's all their parents could afford to give them.
Man, that really puts a damper on.
But it puts things in perspective as to how things were, back then when all this went on. I mean,
but we're thinking like, hey, that kid was naughty. He's getting, I can't believe he's just getting coal, and he's probably thinking, this is great. Now it can be warm.
Well, in Germany, they had Krampus. They'd go by and pick up little kids. He said, my child is naughty. They'd put them in a bag and tie them up to their neck in a bag and carry them around and scare them to death in these monster outfits. So it's a whole thing. I mean, you have to really there's some dark sides to this whole thing about naughty and nice. So, and I try to make it these days, not so much the aspect of that, that every child is basically good until and not necessarily very bad. If you set the house on fire, that's a problem, but
All right. Well, I'm going to try to transition to Jeff Taylor, but sitting here looking at you, all I can think of is Santa. So it's good.
It's red. Yes, it's red. It's gold. It's even the hat has holly on it. So.
So most people, I would assume, know you from WSET.
I would say most people that are of a certain age.
Okay.
I wouldn't say most people, because that's all transitioned out. There are people who have no clue as to anything that I did in my previous life. They're too young. Because think about this now, at the turn of the century.
Well, fair to say most people in our audience.
But I'm from the last century. and a lot of people in your audience are from the last century, and they may know that, but a lot of people who've moved here or even in that age group have no clue that I was on television anchoring the news for 15 years. So
yeah, I mean, it was an amazing run, and we've talked about a number of different stories that you covered.
Right.
And then you went on from there. You worked for Region 2000. You worked for the County of Appomattox. So you've done a lot of other things other than just...
And dabbled continuously in some sort of media, mostly broadcast, visual and sound media, not print. Because print, I mean, basically it's turned into online. So,
yeah, I mean, the evolution of what we've seen in not only media, but news media.
Yeah,
especially over the last, 5 years, maybe 10 years or so?
The last 10 years, and it was talked about in the late 90s about how I went to a conference at Virginia Tech and looked at the newsroom computers, and I said, this is amazing, because if Knight Ridder at the time was putting all their news online as well, and I said, this changes everything. I mean, basically, after talking to a lot of people at this conference, I said in the late 80s, as a matter of fact, we're going to soon be answering our telephones on our TVs and watching TV on our telephones, and feeling that, because they were talking about how cellular devices were going to get smarter and smarter, and about how computer technology was getting smarter and smarter. At that time, I never dreamed that there would be such a thing as AI, but some other people thought about that. And a few years ago, I began thinking, this is going to be unbelievable. We are on the cusp of another huge transition in information technology and knowledge. And it's all going to be, you can turn and ask your TV or your cell phone a question, and it'll answer back. And now we have Alexa. Now we have, Google Nest, or whatever they call the Google part. Siri, which was on the Samsung. That particular technology was on a Samsung phone for 5 years before Siri got a name. And they promoted Siri and asked Siri a question. But you could do that on your Samsung phone 5 years before Apple had it. So, I mean, it's all a matter of perspective.
Well, let's do this. Before we dive into how things have changed in the last 10 years, let's talk a little bit about, your career in the news media, and maybe even beforehand, because you had told me when we spoke earlier that one of the things that not a ton of people know about you is your music background. And at one point, coming through high school into college, you were bound and determined to have a career in music, and that changed like that.
Yeah, I really wanted to be, I worked at a radio station while I was in high school and filled in on a show that played rock and roll music. Back in the day, radio had information and occasional music in the morning, and then they had the middle of the road music during the day, and then they had information and news in the afternoon and evening, and then they had rock and roll, the night train radio show in the evening, and it was rock and roll was a big thing, and the Beatles were a big thing, and it was exploding. And then some radio stations went totally rock and roll. I mean, they were playing rock and roll. I'm not going to listen to that during the day because, there were day parts, and stations signed off at midnight, and then stations began staying on past midnight and having all kinds of broadcast programs after that. So it became a whole niche thing. But I wanted to be, in a big rock and roll band like Chicago or Earth, Wind and Fire, or, the McDonald's but I couldn't play the piano like he did or sing like he did. There were all different kinds of groups. The Carpenters were really big. And I was into music, and I did a lot of different things. I was a security guard working up at Salem Civic Center when it opened with a promoter, and helping music acts, and I learned about that. But I really was playing horn. I was playing a trumpet, a B flat, E flat trumpet, flugelhorn, French horn, baritone.
So this wasn't just something you wanted to do. You were fully invested in this.
I was invested in the whole music thing, singing and performing with different groups occasionally.
And when you went off to college, this was kind of what you were pursuing.
I was in stage band. I was in college group. I sang opera at college.
Opera?
Yeah, absolutely. I sang as a freshman. I sang with several seniors in their senior recitals. So, and I had a wonderful voice instructor, Ruth Pace, in Martinsville when I was in high school, and Bob McMillan, our band director. And I was having trouble in math, and Mr. McMillan said, "This is silly, man." He said, "Music is math," and it was. And that's another realization. It became really quickly to me. I understood that music is definitely math, all kinds of science and math. So, the kids that play in the band are extremely talented. They may not be playing football or volleyball or baseball or any of that stuff, but they're extremely talented because music is math.
So what happened? You go to college, you're bound and determined to have a career in music. You've studied, you have voice coaches, you play all these different instruments. You're going to college with the goal of, working in the music industry. What happened?
Well, I had a brass instructor that was just it was he just had to prove he was right every time, and every time I would go I had to learn a certain piece, he would say I was playing it all wrong, and he would play it, and then I would learn to play it that way, and finally one day I took a recorder in there and recorded what he played, and then I played back and he said, "No, it's all wrong," and he was just rude and insolent, and nobody liked him, and I got to a point where I hate to say I didn't like him either. But I played this for the department chair, and he said, "We've got a problem." And he called the guy in, and it caused a big issue. And he said, "You're never going to pass any of my classes." Well, it ended up I got a pretty good grade, or a C or a B out of it. And he never said another word. I never had to take another lesson with him. All my classes and all my individual tutoring things were I was passed on. So I just said, "The heck with this. I give up." My voice teacher was very upset with me, but I said, "Look, I can use my voice in radio, and I've been doing it already." And I had a work study program thing I had to do, and I had to figure out how to get that. And they didn't have an announcing instructor for the broadcast department, and they said, "You can do that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I can do that." So in college, I switched over.
And that was it. One bad professor.
Back during the day, we went to a university. I went to East Tennessee State University, and they had quarters. They didn't have semesters. And we had 3 quarters in the year plus the summer quarter, which you made up stuff if you didn't do well. And so at the end of my 3rd quarter of my freshman year, I switched over to broadcast.
Wow.
The rest is history, so to speak.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
And then you wind up here in Lynchburg. You spend 15 years at WSET anchoring the news and working in the news department and, all the journalism. And we talked about a few of them this past weekend, but some of the bigger stories, the more memorable things that you did, and those wouldn't necessarily be the biggest stories, would they?
No, there would be a different. A bit, when you think of the Falwells and what was going on with them, and I knew Jerry Sr. fairly well, that was a situation. There were other situations. I mean, the weather became a huge issue because the technology of weather changed over those 15 years from, getting a thing off the AP and drawing it on a map and to, the computers today. So, yeah. I did, and of course the Haysom murders, which you and I have talked about before.
Yeah, and you were really close. I want to dive into that a little bit more in just a second.
Yeah.
But you brought up something that I had to ask about. The weather.
Yeah.
So the technology's changed and we have all these different things, but
hey, back then the earth was going to be covered in ice by the year 2000. You know, I mean, that was a huge fear. And we had some snows, we had, you know, like 4 or 5 snows, one right after the other, where we had 36 inches of snow on the ground. And I mean, 36 inches is 3 feet. That's a lot of snow.
So you are good at math.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I learned that from my Bennett. So, but I mean, you know.
So, but with the weather, though.
Yeah.
All this new technology that we've got.
Yeah.
Why can't those guys still get it right?
Because, you know, it's like driving down the road. You never know when a tire's going to blow, you know, and you never know when some factor, like, you know, we had the derecho and they thought, well, it might hit, but the mountains are in the way. Right. Well, the derecho decided to pop over the mountain, much in the same way that Hurricane Camille decided to pop over a mountain too and kill all those people in Nelson County. So, and I remember that. And, you know, I covered everything from Richard Nixon during my broadcast career all the way up to, I mean, when I was born, Harry Truman was president. So that gives you some idea. When I started in broadcasting and television, we were still shooting black and white film.
Did you work with Charlie Gibson when he was in town?
No, Charlie was here before I was.
It was before
but
you
we know each other, and we communicate on occasion for different reasons. And then you know, he and I would get together sometimes when he came into town at Randolph-Macon when his wife, who used to be at Randolph-Macon, came back, and he became a board member, I believe, there. But he's got a great podcast himself right now.
Does he?
Yes, it's I can't remember. It's about books, and it airs on ABC. So yeah, he and his daughter.
Interesting. You mentioned the Haysom murders.
Yes. Sad situation.
That was, you know, it was really interesting because I wasn't here for that. And I wound up watching over the weekend, knowing that we were going to talk the Netflix special. And I was in the middle of it when we spoke over the weekend. I'd seen 2, I had 2 to go. And I didn't really know much about it, despite I think because I was younger at the time and not from this area.
Were you born 41 years ago? It'll be 41 years this coming in March and April.
I was, but thank you for the compliment. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't something that was on my radar. I didn't really know much about it, but heard about the special, heard about the fact that you were heavily involved, not involved. Let me correct that.
I wasn't involved in the murders at all. No,
I'm aware, but neighbors with them, knew them well.
Yep. Went to things with them, plays and parties, and
and then all of a sudden you're smack dab trying to cover something that, you know, is personal to you. And it, you know, it was interesting when we were talking about this, because I thought that this might be, you know, a big part of this conversation, but you said something that really stuck out to me. And you said, I don't know why people still want to talk about that.
Yeah, it happened at 41 years ago. Elizabeth Haysom and Jens Soring are out of prison. It's over with. Derek and Nancy Haysom are never coming back. And but it's still an issue. It's kind of like...
Do you think that's because we don't really know what happened?
Yeah, we don't. There's a pretty good idea that some people have. There are a lot of different theories, and I have a different theory than most people. But I mean, you know, it's Lizzie Borden type thing. You know,
do you think that's one of the main reasons why it's still interesting to people? Because it's one of those things where you think, you think to yourself, maybe when I die, I'll learn the real truth about all these.
There are 4 people who know what happened, and 2 of them are dead, and 2 of them are alive, and 2 of them have told so many lies, in my opinion, that they probably don't even remember what the truth really is or how it went. And that was 41 years ago. And believe me, I'm an old man, and I know my memory's not as good as it was. I remember certain things about my life, but, you know.
You said you have a different theory on it than most people.
My theory is the first lie they told to the investigators in England when they were captured in England are probably as close as you can get, because they had written a lot of this down and to each other about what had happened. And I think that what they said and talked about in court originally about her being in Washington and out buying drugs and taking drugs, and that drugs were involved. Obviously, she had a history of drug abuse. I think that, and she stayed up there, and what they told the investigators, where he came down, thought he was going to get away with it because he had diplomatic immunity, which he did not have. I think that's probably as close as we're going to get to the real truth. Derek and Nancy Haysom know who killed them, and Elizabeth and Jens know who killed their parents, because they plotted it for a long time and wrote about how they were going to do it. And he wrote about how he was going to do it. And, I think, and I was there right after it happened and was asked to come in to look at some things, because they had no idea why someone would have a teletype in an office up in a part of the house they didn't understand. And, some things, some symbols and things they wanted to know about, and asked my opinion about. And it became very, very personal at that point. When you see the bodies of two people, you see the scene, you know that somebody went in the bathroom and took a shower, and they were taking apart the plumbing to get as much as they can. And also there was no cell phones, there were no DNA things, right. There were nothing. The only thing we had to do to keep from contaminating the crime scene was put little booties on our feet to walk through. And it was a nightmare scene. It was unbelievable. So
you got to go in?
Unfortunately, yeah. He asked me, and then asked me to help identify some things, and not the bodies, because those had already been identified.
Mm-hmm. What was it like for you being so close to the family, and and still trying? And I know, at least in the special, you said, I don't want to be on the air with this. Yeah. Was that just the first? I mean, you still, as long as this dragged on, you had to cover something. What's it like covering something as horrific as that with people that you knew, liked, socialized with, all that?
It was not easy. I had left the station after the 6 o'clock news to go take the crew that was out there food, and because I knew where it was. And when I got there, that's when I talked to Carl Wells, the sheriff, and he asked me to come in. But I couldn't go back. I went back to the office and said, "Look, you guys are on your own. You have to. I can't do the show. I couldn't do the show. I couldn't watch the show, even though I got home and plenty of time to watch it. It was just, it's I've seen terrible scenes, plane crashes, and fire victims, and people with substance abuse who froze to death outside. I've seen all that, and I've seen a lot of things that first responders see that no one should have to see. I covered a lot of stories like that, but this was, I don't want to say it was a gut punch, but it was a realization that this could happen to anybody, anytime that I know. And, how do you handle that? Well, you pick up your stuff and you go back to work the next day. And I had to do that the next day. And we made a conscious effort for me not to have to read any stories about the Haysom case from then on, unless I was the only person anchoring the news that night. So, yeah, it was not easy, but you learn from it.
The word journalist nowadays is thrown around probably a lot more than it should be. And we touched on this earlier, the changing face of media, news media. We used to have people that we trusted to deliver the news in an unbiased, we thought.
Well, and it wasn't like that before. I mean, there used to be newspapers like the and still are, like the Rochester Democrat Chronicle and the Arizona Republic. And they were two-sided, and they pushed their own agenda, and they wrote about it in the stories. But as things grew and we got into the quote-unquote Gilded Age, it became more expensive for newspapers to send people to Cairo and to London and to Rome. So this thing called the Associated Press was formed, and it was like newspapers suddenly were doing just the facts journalism through the Associated Press and United Press International and all these other folks. And they were getting just the facts, ma'am, news and writing their opinions on the opinion page. Papers began to be segmented. Back when Thomas Nast was writing for Harper's Weekly, they were pushing an agenda.
Right.
And most newspapers were at the time, the power of the press.
Yeah, and I guess I was looking more at, the mediums that you were in, right?
Well, the AP helped develop the radio, and that fact that there was no opinion on the radio. Radio stations didn't want to give, editorials. And TV stations rarely did. They did. It was the general manager reading a statement for a minute or 2 minutes, and you lost that amount of time from your broadcasting show. You wanted to be unbiased. You wanted people to trust you, because there was a thing called yellow journalism back then with the newspapers. I mean, they went through this whole scandal thing with Hearst and all those guys. So, it became just the facts journalism, and that was taught in universities as you taught. You went to journalism school. You didn't go to broadcast school. Broadcast schools weren't until after World War II.
So what's your take on where we're at now?
Anybody can be a journalist. Anybody can be an influencer and say they are a journalist. People, especially on this station, say, I'm not a journalist, I'm a host, and I espouse an opinion. But people in mass media said they're journalists and didn't espouse opinions and didn't do things, and they became untrusted because people found out the things they were telling them weren't necessarily true, or they would see, oh, wow, they're tilting this or they're tilting that because somebody is bringing it to our attention in another form of media, which is called social media. Mm-hmm. And, you get more of everybody's got an opinion view in social media, and you have to laugh because you have to take most everything you read there with a grain of salt.
You'd mentioned, Charlie Gibson doing a podcast, and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But it's hard to find people nowadays who aren't doing a podcast. And a lot of them we don't know about, right? But everybody's got the way technology's evolved. Everybody has an opportunity to do something like this. So that's drastically changing things.
Yeah, but when I was growing up, there was a TV show called That Was the Week That Was, and it came on every Sunday, and they talked about all the news headlines in satire from the week before and made fun of it, and it was comedic. And that was the time when Lenny Bruce was coming up and saying...
But you knew what you were getting when you turned it on.
Yeah, you knew that, yeah. And some of that's made its way into journalism. That's the thing. And it's not journalism really anymore. It's just information that's tainted or tilted, or yellow journalism, as I call it. But, everybody talks about, and Trump is really one of the big purveyors of all this. And his son taught him about TikTok real quick and where to get information. And, there are TikTok shops where people sell stuff all the time. I mean, I saw this on TikTok shop, which is silly because a lot of that stuff is just junk that people like and buy. It's like the yo-yo that's trendy at the time, the hula hoop, trendy at the time. And eventually things wear out. It's like fashion. They go away.
You mentioned Trump and what we're talking about in terms of journalism and biased journalism, which isn't real journalism, yellow journalism, as you call it. And so many people it seems to have an agenda with him. Like he's a lightning rod, right? Where people like him and they're going to do everything they can to support him, under the terms of journalism. And then it goes the other way too. And it seems like that's really changed a lot more with the advent of him getting interjected into politics.
All you have to do is watch Jimmy Kimmel, and you can understand, because he is, everything's kind of a pendulum. And I look at liberals and conservatives in a circle form. Liberals are here, conservatives are here, but they're really only that far apart. Mm-hmm. They're looking at each other through the circle lens. And they look at each other this way and talk about each other in that way. But they're really only that far apart. And you know, because when you think about how things are in this world, in this country, we've got it knocked in this country. Basically, people say, I need to move or need to go because they don't like the politics of the time. That's happened plenty of times before, believe me. Mm. I mean, when Richard Nixon was going through what he was going through, people said, maybe we ought to move to Peru or someplace. But, you know, it's the nature of the beast. It happened back when FDR was president. You know, we keep electing this guy. He's been around too long, and Republicans were not popular then. But then after World War II, Dwight Eisenhower realized he couldn't get elected as a Democrat, so he ran as a Republican and won. But that's the nature of the politics. But we're so comfortable, we don't know how good we've got it sometimes.
You talk about the pendulum swinging and changing, and I agree with that. Do you think it'll ever swing back to where people trust the news media?
In a couple of generations.
Okay.
Or 3, maybe. It's going to take time. Yeah. But you know, people have got to understand we're in flux. We're in this. If you look at things called the theory of chaos, that's where most of your change occurs. And they usually apply to this theory of chaos with weather or earthquake events or volcanic eruptions, and they look back in history at those things when they happen. And people didn't understand a lot of things back then. Now we've got so much information, and we're piling it into these supercomputers, and we've got AI that are coming up with medical breakthroughs in a matter of minutes as opposed to a matter of decades. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? And I don't know when it'll change, but it's going to change.
You think it will swing back?
Yeah. And the only constant in this world is change. Mm.
Circling back to your days at WSET.
Sure.
And we talked about the Haysom murders, but other stories, maybe some that might not be as big as people would think, that you really enjoyed covering.
Oh, man. I don't remember what we talked about, but, you know, I thoroughly enjoyed covering Jerry Falwell. That helped me learn a lot about the mass media on a bigger scale with the networks. Of course, there was the situation with Falwell and Hustler magazine,
yep.
And Penthouse and Jimmy Carter. And what happened was that's when we had the equal time rule. And Jerry Falwell went on his show, and they passed the shows. The Old Time Gospel Hour went around on big 2-inch videotape rules. It was called a bicycle wheel. And they rotated the different programs, and it was kind of generic. He would preach, and we'd air the service one Sunday, and we passed the tape on to another station. They'd air it the next Sunday, and it was all done by courier. And so Falwell said about Jimmy Carter, he'd never have him in the pulpit to speak, and he railed about him being on Penthouse. Well, that was equal time situation, and Carter wanted equal time on every television station that ran that. And that was about 15 minutes of time, and back then that was a big deal, and everybody was fighting it, and nobody wanted to air, you know, Jimmy Carter talking for 15 minutes. He was running for president, and Jerry Falwell decided to hold a news conference about this equal time situation, and the networks said, we're coming down, and the 3 big networks, there was no CNN at the time, or if it was really small. ABC, NBC, CBS, the local stations, Channel 10, Channel 7, Channel 13, covering it. And he was in his office, and we all piled in there with our brand new videotape cameras in color. And so he made a statement, and he said, okay, Jeff, you've got the first question. And I said, I had found out that he had a preacher from the chaplain of Bourbon Street come on his show in August. And this was, of course, the height of election season in September, October. And, but I'd found out this preacher he had been in the Hustler magazine in July and done the interview in Hustler. And I pulled out the Hustler magazine in Jerry Falwell's office and said, you had this guy on, he was in here in July. And Falwell stopped everything and said, "Thank you for coming," and got up out of his own office and walked out. and everybody at the network level were kind of upset, and so were the local folks, because they didn't get to ask a question. Mm-hmm. They only had a statement. They all had lots of questions to ask. But they were all stunned that I'd found this out and knew about it, and that became the news story. I suddenly became part of the news story, which I didn't like at the time, because I didn't.
That's not the goal.
That's
right?
not right. Yeah, you don't want to be the news. You want to
report.
It's absolutely. So anyway, the NBC and ABC thought enough to say, "Look, we'll put you on a little retainer. Anything happen, you let us know. You call us up long distance back then. That's back when we had touch-tone phones and 6 lines across the bottom of the phone. Pick up line 1, but." Yeah, it was an interesting time. It was an interesting time in journalism, because Falwell had started, with the moral majority, and the moral majority was making a dent.
Did you ever envision Liberty University would become what it's become, and what we saw in years? No,
but what happened? Jerry wanted that, and he talked about that all the time, and he said this is going to happen, and we're going to be as big. One of these days, we're going to play in Lynchburg, Virginia, Notre Dame, in a football game. And I'm like, and knowing how, because it started out as Lynchburg Bible College. Mm-hmm. And, there was a lot of, it was an interesting time with, especially with students, because it was a situation where you had to wear a tie and coat to class, and girls had to wear skirts. Women, I should say, had to wear skirts. And, and all that's changed too, the gender situation and the Me Too movement and everything. But anyway, it was a situation that you never think that somebody's going to choose to go to a school and they're going to have as many millions of students as they had. But they started this videotape school, Liberty, University. You call in, you get your classes by videotape and study and take tests based on what you saw. And it became that became a forefront of Liberty Online, and that became the big part of Liberty University. So once they got to that part, it exploded. And I'm not surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised if one day Notre Dame is playing. They're going to have to get a better football coach, but no offense to the one they have. But
you mean Liberty or Notre Dame?
Liberty and Notre Dame. They're going to have to do what Virginia Tech has done, make a concerted effort, commitment to do that, and find somebody who somebody else didn't like as a coach, and get them up here.
Well, the nature of college sports has just changed dramatically in the last
that's another
years.
example of a constant of change, though. The NIL has changed everything. Name, image, and likeness has changed all of sports. It's exploded women's sports. That's the reason that women's sports are so big, which I know you love. You have such a love of women's sports, especially. I
might argue how big it is.
When I was on your radio show once and talked about a junior Olympic curling champion living in Lynchburg, you were like, that's not a sport. So,
curling. Come on.
It is a sport.
Come on.
Yeah, it's a sport.
We're brushing ice here.
It's a sport. Pickleball is a sport now too. So, whoever dreamed pickleball would explode. Some of the best pickleball players are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. So, you've seen the commercials on TV. The Michelob commercial, or Let's Play.
Right. So we've learned to believe everything we see on TV.
Oh, well, and that's the other thing. When kids go to the movies or something happens these days, they saw the in Star Wars the Death Star explode. So they've seen it all. They've seen worlds blown up by this. So in their opinion, they've seen it all. They ain't seen nothing yet. You know, when you see people you know butchered in the way they were butchered, you know, and I still haven't. I'm sure maybe, you know, who knows? If the asteroid hits, the world's going to change. If the volcano explodes like Mount Vesuvius does, the world is going to change.
So, here in the Lynchburg area,
Yep.
Stories that you didn't get a chance to cover that you would have loved to have covered. Couple of examples, and there may be others that come to your mind because you're way more dialed in than I am, but the Jerry Falwell Jr. scandal at Liberty University. What else?
But I got some calls from some of my old network buddies.
Oh, did you?
That. Yeah. And I kind of, I worked for a security company that worked for Liberty for a while. And I was a supervisor at the football games. And I got to see a little of that, but that's not something you go around talking about all the time because, you know, you got to prove it if you talk about it. So, I mean, if not, you'll get sued. So.
But I mean, is that a story or, you know, another example, what's going on at city council, right? I mean, are those things that you wish that you would have had the opportunity to cover and talk about?
I've been out of it long enough that I've always been a news consumer, so I'm interested in watching it and hearing about it. I'm not interested necessarily in covering it. You know, city council has gone through some machinations. When I first came here, annexation was just getting ready to happen. And there was a group called CCOA, Concerned Citizens Opposed to Annexation. And they changed the name of that moniker in another way. I can't remember, but it was still CCOA. And when annexation was pushed through and it went to the General Assembly and was approved, and annexation happened in, I believe it was 75 or 76. I'm pretty sure it was 76. You know, the CCO folks put a whole slate of people up to run for city council, and they won all but one seat. And that changed things in Lynchburg dramatically because they wanted to make sure that the annexation, the annexed portions of Campbell and Bedford County got the things that were promised. Because back then, and I don't think any community has been annexed since then, some counties actually became cities just to avoid that. Chesapeake being one of them. But, you know, they wanted to make sure that the neighborhoods got what was promised in curb and guttering and that sort of thing, and fire protection and police protection. So things happened, and the city has grown to a point where it used to be a rescue squad here. That used to be the first responder at accidents, other than police and fire, and that got rolled into the fire department, EMS. Communications changed totally. Used to be a guy sitting at a radio dispatching people. You had a police dispatcher, a fire dispatcher, a rescue squad dispatcher, and now it's all one E911 system. All the technology changed. It was a slow change, but it changed for the better, and it works really well, I think. So yeah. But yeah, their council's been through some of that before. Very liberal councils, very conservative councils, just different councils.
Well, and you know what we're seeing now, and I think you know what we're seeing in Lynchburg, you know, reflects what we're seeing on a grander stage in politics. But you know and I've brought this up before, and I don't know if it was on this show or not, but I see it pop up in my social media feeds from time to time. You know, when Reagan was running against Mondale, and was asked in the debate about, you know, his age, and he kind of quipped back, you know, I'm not going to make age or a part of this because I don't think it's fair to expose my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so he kind of took a shot at Mondale, but in a joking way. Mondale's laughing. Everybody's laughing. Right. We used to have political adversaries who could still get along.
Yeah.
Right?
But
and we don't seem to have that anymore, and it's trickled all the way down to the local level.
That may change. I mean, you know, it's always been an issue. I mean, I watched Jimmy Carter and Reagan debate in Williamsburg. I covered that, and that was a fun experience to a certain extent. What was the most fun about it was watching the audience and
Why?
because you know people wanted zingers. They really wanted you to zap somebody, and like you said, they reacted more than the people at home reacted to it. So same thing with Nixon and his 5 o'clock shadow. I mean, people at home reacted to that, and people at home reacted in a negative way, and that became an issue. Oh, look at the power of broadcast television. So,
but I was saying, like, politically, the fact that what we see at council, name calling, like, I mean, you know, what we see on the national level with assassination attempts and, you know, the just vitriol we see people spewing at the other side. I mean, it's not just political or it's not just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, people's different political theories that they're debating.
It's disrespect.
Personal.
It's disrespect. Yeah. But see, the thing about it was, you know, when and I can't remember which president it was, but Dan Rather got up to ask a question, and the Dan Rather zinged back the president, and that people at home were like, oh wow! But there were some people at home that really liked that. I mean, and Sam Donaldson did the same thing. I mean, so this has gone on, and you know, and this has gone on for a long time as far as adversarial role between journalists and politicians.
Well, I'm saying, but just the politicians themselves.
But they have taken that moniker on themselves, and that's where it is, and
that's not good for where we're at.
Trump is at a point now where he will say anything,
right?
You know, whether it's right or wrong, just to get a rise out of somebody, you know. And he gets personal with journalists, as he calls them. You know, I mean, he gets very personal in a rude and way, which I don't like personally. But there's some people at home that think this is the best thing since sliced bread. Give them hell, baby. But, you know, it is, and things will change, and these things have happened before. I mean, it happened on the floor of Congress a lot back in the early 1800s and late 1800s. I mean, people were threatening each other with canes. I mean, it was a time.
And, I would like to personally think we've evolved past all that. But to your point about the pendulum swinging back, is that kind of where we're at now?
No, it's not where we're at, and it's not where we're going to be, like I said, for 2 or 3 generations. Here's the thing. When you think about the number of people just alone in the United States, at 1900, there were 75 million people in the United States in 1900. In 1950, there were 150 million people, double what was in this. In 2000, there were 300 million. Now they're close to 340 million. And if we double again to 600 million people in the year 2050, that's, I mean, you know, the earth may tilt, so to speak, but that's a lot of people. And when you think about, they say the number of incidents of these things are rising, and the number of incidents of people being mean to people, crime, all sorts of things, the percentages may be staying the same, but you know, when the percentage stays the same and you have that many more people, you're going to have that many more incidents of things. So whether it's being people rude to each other, and we become a nation where we don't know our neighbors. You know, that was not the way it was. I mean, back during World War II, we became a pretty close-knit community in this country of know your neighbors and help your neighbors and victory gardens and all sorts of things. And in 2001, when 9/11 hit, you know, it changed overnight. There were flags on every house and every block in most communities. And we got to know our neighbors quickly, but then now we've moved around and we're flowing a lot more, ebbing and flowing than we haven't had this much transfer in people moving around the country since the West was settled.
Mm.
So in the early late 1800s, you wanted to escape what you went through during the Civil War. You went out west, and things were terrible out there then. So yeah, things have changed, and it's going to change again and change again. And when the asteroid hits, it'll change again.
What's your favorite part about Christmas?
The fact that this is a time when we were given the greatest gift we were ever given, and it's our turn to give our greatest gifts back to the people that we love and the people that we don't even know. The gift of love is a big thing, and that's what was preached. I'm a firm believer. I'm a Christian. I'm a firm believer in doing what we can. I've studied denominations through the years. Martin Luther had some pretty good ideas. Some other people have had some pretty good ideas over the years. But I believe that love trumps all. I'm an equal opportunity Santa. I give hugs to everybody. And I believe that you have got to give your best to people every day of the year. I want people to make every day Christmas.
One of the things that really jumps out to me, and this is circling back to the earlier part of our conversation, you really treat being Santa as not just fun, but as a way to share a message with people, and more importantly, with kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're taught in Sunday school and in church that we need to love people, and some churches don't love people. It's always been the most segregated time of the week in every community in this country was 11 o'clock on Sunday, because people of different beliefs go to different churches. People of different color go to different churches. That's beginning to change somewhat. But, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and we were going to change the world. We were going to love one another, and we were, segregation was a thing that we were getting rid of, and we're still segregated to a great degree. But we're seeing some things change. And it's going to be a slow change. And we've got to love people that we disagree with. And hopefully that will change. I think that that love is a big thing. I think it's something that Jesus taught. I think it's something that God wants us to do. And I think that the greatest gift was given when he was born. And we've got to live our lives like that as best we can. And there are times when we can't do that. There are times when it's very difficult for us, when something happens that angers us or gets us upset. So you've got to, when the guy goes to cut us off, we don't know necessarily what happened to him that day. We don't know why he might be angry or she might be angry. Like the woman who got mad and jumped on the car at the corner of Old Forest Road and Lakeside Drive. We don't know what's going on. And there are issues that people have. I mean, one year when my children were little, I had a guy in the grocery store. The cashier said, "Mr. Taylor, it's great to see you. I saw you on TV." And he looked at me and he goes, "Are you the guy on TV?" And every expletive in the world came out of his mouth about what we were doing. And he had a little kid in his grocery cart with him. And he just went on and on and on. And my kids were all lined up behind me. They were scared to death. And I said, you get to see my work every day. What do you do? And he told me his name. And I said, I'm coming tomorrow down to your shop and watch you work, and I'll give you my critique down there then. And he turned ash white and walked out the door with this poor little kid. And I called up the next day to his, no, he's not here today. He called in sick. And then I got to thinking, what if he couldn't afford to call in sick? What happened when he got home with his wife and children? What may have happened because I did what I did. And I thought, and everybody was like, yeah, that was a great thing. And I got to thinking about that. And I got to thinking, I'm never doing that again, because I don't know, he might have gone home and beat his wife and children. He might have been so afraid and called in sick that I was going to show up with a film crew and cameras and put him on TV. I mean,
see, I would put that all on him. He initiated all
well,
that.
but sometimes you don't know. I may have said something on television, and there were times when I did that we got lots of phone calls about. I mean, I've gotten death threats. My daughter, I was a single parent with a daughter. She got death threats when 3 Mile Island occurred. And I got on TV and said, and 3 Mile Island was designed by Babcock and Wilcox in Lynchburg, Virginia. You're trying to kill our industry. And this is when what was it called?
Chernobyl?
No, the Meltdown movie with Jane Fonda.
Oh, okay. Silkwood?
No, that's another one. But anyway, those movies were coming out about China syndrome. That was it.
Okay, I don't know.
And and people were saying they're trying to put our business out of business. And this is what we do, and this is how people make money in Lynchburg. Then there was one time when we did a story. Jerry Falwell was leaving South Africa, and he was getting on his plane to come back to Lynchburg, Virginia. He said Nelson Mandela does not speak for all black people in South Africa. And he got on his plane and flew away, and I aired that bite. And when I got upstairs after the newscast, it was like, man, the phones were ringing off the hook. And I got on one phone, and this lady goes, "Are you a communist? You hate Jerry Falwell. You're this, you're that." And I mean, she just let me have it. And I said, "Thank you, ma'am." And they said, "Here's another one." And he goes, "Jerry Falwell paid you to say that, didn't he? You go to his church every Sunday, don't you?" I mean, it was, so I figured we'd done our job. We'd gotten everybody upset. But it's those are times when you have to think about what you say and the power of what you say. And I had decided at that point in time that there were certain things I was not going to do. I was going to give the other guy the benefit of the doubt. I let people out of they're trying to get into traffic, and traffic's heavy after the parade. I let them out because I don't want anybody, being upset. Not upset at me, but upset at the situation.
Oh, you better hope I'm not behind you when you're doing that.
Well, that's the reason I eventually move along. Yeah,
the New York in me will come out.
It's happening. When the horns start, I start moving.
The horns start blowing and the birds start flying as well.
Yep. That's exactly right. I've experienced that, but I would rather accept a bird than have somebody get mad enough to jump on the hood of my car and pull my windshield wipers off.
One more quick one.
Sure.
Tell me the flat tire story with one Dennis Carter.
If you talk about your golf game, I'll talk about the flat tire. Dennis Carter just come to work for us and just moved up here. And he called me one night before cell phones. And he goes, "Taylor, I got a problem." And I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "I got a flat tire." And I said, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm up on Candler's Mountain." And I said, "Candler's Mountain?" Because there was nothing up there at that time. And I believe it was close to the point where Runkin Pratt is at Liberty. I guess it's called Liberty Ridge.
Yeah, okay.
And there was a little dirt pull off there. And he said, "Yeah, we walked up here." And I said, "We?" And he said, "Yeah, I have my girlfriend with me." And I was like, "Okay, I'll be there as quick as I can." So we rode up, and sure enough, he got a flat tire. And I said, "Why didn't you change it?" He goes, "I don't know how." And so I...
Now, is that, you're in a remote place with a girl, flat tire, is that kind of like, "Oh, we ran out of gas, honey"?
That's pretty close to it.
DC with the moves? Back in the
DC
day?
was, this was before he met Regina, and I can tell you another story about Dennis and Regina. Dennis came to work for us, and Regina, his wife, was an intern at the station, and she walked in and she talked to him, and, they had some interaction. And a few days later, he walked in and she was there, and she said, "I'm going to marry that guy one day." And eventually, she got married. So, to Dennis Carter, and they fell in love, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. Finish the flat tire.
So anyway, we
I want to hear how Dennis
changed the tire, and Dennis got in his car and drove off. So
so there really was a flat tire.
It was a flat tire. It was as flat could be. And he was like, "Where do I take this?" And I said, Kerr Tire or Lynchburg Tire or wherever you want to take it. But you're going to have to probably get a new tire. It was flat.
He didn't puncture it himself, did he?
Oh, no, he did not. And then this had a big old spike type thing in it. It was bigger than a regular nail.
Learning all kinds of things about Dennis.
Hey, Dennis is a great guy.
He is.
He's the nicest guy in broadcast that I ever worked with.
And it's genuine. It's 100% genuine. Because you meet a lot of nice people like, oh, what a nice guy. And then you get to know them. They're not. Dennis is.
There were a few. And I mean, most people generally tried to be nice. But, in the news business, there's a lot of differing opinions. In any kind of broadcast, there are a lot of differing opinions. You know that. It's like politics. There are a lot of differing opinions about how things should go. So, I mean, there are people you could disagree with who are still the nicest people. And I mean, when you treat people with respect, it's like Charlie Gibson. He's always been as nice to me as he can be. When he and Diane Sawyer and Lara Spencer and Robin Roberts were up at Lexington, they were doing a show. And we supplied them with a lot of crew people who went to work at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning to get set up for Good Morning America at VMI and WNL. I got up, went up there to make sure all these people were doing the things that we had hoped they would do. And they were getting paid by ABC to do it, local crew. And I was in the background, and all of a sudden, and Charlie Gibson, who has a mic on, and a lot of people were working in the truck, he goes, "Well, as I live and breathe, there's Jeff Taylor." And, and I kind of waved, and I said, "We'll talk later." Because we wanted to interview him and Diane about broadcasting, because it was the station's 50th anniversary coming up in February. So, and we got them on the air, and it was a lot of fun.
Cool.
So, I mean, it was just, there are a lot of people, nice people, and some of the nicest and greatest people in broadcast are the folks who are behind the scenes, pulling all the switches and running the cameras and getting the audio set up, and the graphic artists and designers and the people who built the sets and the promotions people. There are a lot of people behind what you do every day on the air that deserve a lot more respect and a lot of gratitude for what they do.
Don't nod your head. Don't nod your head, Ashley. She's been naughty this year.
Has she? Oh, well, what can I say?
You've got places to be coming up. I mean, it's Christmas season. I appreciate your time. And,
well, thank you.
I know there's so much that we didn't cover.
And you're still on the almost nice list.
I'll take that. I will take that.
You want you want a new Kubota? Is that what you want? A set of clubs so you can go
new
up,
golf clubs.
So you can go up to Wintergreen or someplace and play.
I could use some new golf clubs, Santa. That's for sure.
I hope your wife is listening.
Jeff, thank you.
It's
been a pleasure.
Rich, it's been a wonderful. Let me shake your hand here.
We need to do this again when we have more time.
We will, and we'll talk about other stuff.
I'd love it. I'd love it.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Jeff Taylor.